Over the past 8 months, I designed, prototyped, and built a fully functional virtual reality motion simulator. But words don't really do it justice, so I've made this video telling the story of how I built my simulator. I began by researching similar projects done by other makers. I used what I learned from their projects to CAD out a very basic design for my platform and order some of the electronic components. I built this first design out of 2x4s using a miter saw I had borrowed from a friend. I attached the motors I had ordered to the frame, spent 2 days trying to figure out why they weren't moving, another day on why the software wasn't working as intended, and then I was off to the races. Figuratively speaking, of course, because I soon learned a couple of important things. First, the motors I had purchased from China weren't powerful enough to lift even the chair, let alone me. And second, much of the frame, especially on and around the joints, needed to be reinforced in order to endure the stresses which I intended to apply. At this point, I felt like I was in way over my head. It's normally about this time in a story that a miracle occurs, and mine is no different. I soon found Wally, who would mentor me throughout the rest of the project. Wally had years of machining and engineering experience, a machine and wood shop in his garage, and lived just 2 blocks away. Together with Wally, I was able to machine new parts to reinforce the joints and rods connecting the upper and lower portions of the frame and calculate what the proper specifications were for when I went to order the new motors. A week or 2 later, I found exactly the motors I needed, and after negotiating a 10% discount from the manufacturer in China, I had only to wait another 6 weeks until the motors were delivered. The period of time from this point until finishing the first working version of the simulator was a blur. Wally and I spent countless hours designing and machining new parts, completely rebuilding the frame, troubleshooting new issues as they arose, and excitedly anticipating the arrival of new parts. Eventually, I had built the first working version of my simulator. It was successfully able to lift not just the upper portion of the frame, but also me. Having made it to this point was amazing, especially because I could now use the simulator, but there was still more to do. I cycled through a couple iterations of solutions for motion compensation for the virtual reality headset I was using, so that my head would no longer be thrown through the roof of whichever virtual car I was racing, and I also repurposed 2 of the smaller motors which I had previously had to replace. I mounted them to the upper platform, and using 2 springs, attached both sides of the harness I was using to levers on each motor in order to be able to dynamically increase or decrease the tension on the harness while driving to simulate the forces of braking. The story of my simulator is not over yet, but so far this is what I have achieved. Recently, I've simply been enjoying using the simulator for my own benefit and running demos for my friends and family, of who I have not yet gotten a single negative review. I'd also like to thank the amazing community at xsimulator.net, who provided me with amazing technical support and advice throughout this process, and whose community I am proud to now be a part of. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about this journey.